Hello, Connections. Glad you're here. We are going to be talking this week about pressure points, about coming through, navigating the tests and the trials that God sets before us. Now, we have all been experiencing quite a bit of tests lately, myself included. When that pressure comes, what's our response? Too often, our response is some of the things we talked about last week, the flight or the fight. When the devil gets us on our heels, when we respond in our flesh, he has already won. That's why it's so important for us to take an accounting of where we're being squeezed. And that's what we're going to be talking a lot about this week. Because what hinders our ability to have greater faith is a lack of trust in God. That when the tough times come, God won't be there. What helps us increase our faith and therefore increase the opportunities for God to work amongst us is by knowing that even though we're walking through the most difficult time, God is always there. And he has a purpose and a plan to take what was set against us and work it out for our good, which certainly plays into some of what Bob was sharing on Sunday. So we're going to use as our kind of connecting point through all of the different topics this week, James 1, verse 12. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterwards, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Perseverance and not responding with everything our body is screaming at us, it's time to go, or it's time to fight. But giving God an opportunity to minister to us and minister through us is where we need to be settled in. We're going to learn an awful lot from Paul this week, especially looking towards 2 Corinthians. It is the second letter that we have from Paul dealing with the church in Corinth. That is a church that is filled with the Holy Spirit, that is anxious to be equipped and used by God, but oftentimes stumbles upon themselves and goes and seeks things in the wrong places. So they are this beautiful demonstration of God's love and how he grows the church, and also a great frustration for Paul, who has to continue to speak words of correction. And in 2 Corinthians, he gets quite a head of steam up against all of those that are speaking poorly about him within the church. And so what we have is a very passionate, very pointed argument from Paul that we find in 2 Corinthians versus the tone he has in 1 Corinthians. But I love it for the passion and the words that come from that passion. So we'll be visiting 2 Corinthians quite a bit this week, and then also be pulling in some James and some Peter along the way as well. But let's get started. 2 Corinthians 4 in verse 8. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. Through suffering, our bodies continue to share in the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be seen in our bodies. Now, in this particular passage, Paul isn't talking about we, the church, or he is talking about we, my traveling companions. He is talking about what he is experiencing himself. Because others are saying he's not as credible as these other speakers that come in. He doesn't present as strong of authority as these other speakers that come through. He's not naturally gifted as a preacher as these others. And Paul is making a plea saying, I'm out here fighting for your very lives. And in order to do so, I am facing every kind of trial. But through those trials, God will demonstrate what it is to have faith. God will demonstrate his power to overcome all things. We spoke last week of God's power to move mountains. All of that is on display in Paul's life, and that is the purpose of Paul's ministry more than anything else. How does a man of God or a woman of God get back up after being beaten down? By God's power, by God's provision, by God's love. And from James 1, verse 2, Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Hard to remember in the midst of trial and tribulation. When you're being squeezed and all of those pressure points are digging into your flesh. It's important for us to take a moment and ask the very important question. Why, God? What is it that you desire for me to learn in this situation? What is it that you desire to accomplish through this trial? What are the areas in my life that you are allowing to be tested, not because you don't know my heart, Lord, but because I need to know my heart more? These are the areas that once we've addressed, once we've allowed God to identify, he can remove that burden from us by faith. Unfortunately, what we often respond in is fear and doubt. Run for the hills. And that is the mark of a mature Christian versus someone who is just coming into a relationship. And the only difference between those two is the mature Christian has experienced the test previous and reminds themselves in the midst of the current test that God brought them through. Over and over, every time I'm tested, Lord, you bring me through. That's all that God is developing, whether we see it in Paul or what James is sharing or what Peter is sharing in 1 Peter 1:6. So be truly glad. There is wonderful joy ahead, even though you must endure many trials for a little while. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. So when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus is revealed to the whole world. And that's what I want to leave with you today. Whatever we are facing today, whatever struggles, whatever challenges, those are temporary. God is calling us to look beyond our troubles to the coming glory, the coming the kingdom, the majesty, the place where there will be no more tears, no more struggle, no more tests. And that's what we look forward to. That is our hope. And meantime, we allow God to develop the things that need to be developed, whether that be perseverance, whether that be greater faith, whether that be an opportunity to move a mountain. All of these things come to those who are willing to follow Christ, even into the suffering and the struggle and the pain. I encourage you today to be men and women of faith and to trust God more and to not run for the hills every time something comes against you, but be willing to ask the questions of why, Lord? What is it that you desire for me to learn? Where are you asking me to grow? How can I trust you more? Will you do that for me? Will you do that for God? Will you do that for yourself so that you will be counted amongst God's children for eternity? I pray that you will. We're going to visit this again twice more this week. I hope you'll stay with me. We're going to continue to mix through 2 Corinthians and get some other voices involved as well. Paul from a different perspective when he shares with the church in Rome. Till then, know that I love you and I miss you. And please, be good.